Imagine this. Two people wake up tomorrow morning. One checks their phone before even getting out of bed. The other follows a 300-year-old Japanese ritual that takes less than 3 minutes. By lunchtime, one is already stressed, distracted, and mentally exhausted. The other feels calm, focused, and in control. Now here's the crazy part. Japan has some of the longest living people on Earth, and many of their daily habits were specifically designed to calm the mind, reduce stress, and create emotional balance long before anyone had ever heard the word cortisol. But most people outside Japan never learn these rituals. Today, I'm going to show you 5 Japanese rituals that can lower stress surprisingly fast, and they get progressively more powerful. In fact, the final ritual is so effective that many Japanese practitioners consider it the foundation of a peaceful life. So don't skip ahead, because level 5 completely changes the way you think about stress. Let's start with level 1. Matcha. The first Japanese ritual is something most people have seen before, but very few understand why it matters. Matcha. At first glance, it just looks like green tea. Nothing special, no flashy packaging, no miracle claims, no expensive gadgets, just a simple green powder mixed with hot water. And yet, for centuries, Japanese monks have used it before meditation. Why? Because unlike many modern energy drinks that push your nervous system into overdrive, matcha creates a very different experience. People often describe it as calm energy, not hyper energy, calm energy. Think about that for a second. How often do you feel both relaxed and focused at the same time? For most people, it's rare. They're either tired or stressed, either distracted or overwhelmed. But the traditional Japanese tea ritual wasn't just about drinking something healthy. It was about slowing down. For a few minutes, everything stops. The phone can wait, the emails can wait, the notifications can wait. You prepare the tea, you hold the bowl, you watch the steam rise, and for those few moments, your attention returns to the present. That alone may be more powerful than most people realize, because stress often lives in 2 places: regret about the past, or worry about the future. The present moment is usually much calmer, and the Japanese understood that long before modern stress research existed. But what's fascinating is that level 2 takes this idea even further, because instead of bringing calm into a cup, it brings calm into an entire environment. And once you hear what it is, you'll understand why some people call it nature's reset button. Level 2. Shinrin-yoku. Imagine walking through a forest. No destination, no schedule, no fitness tracker, no podcast playing in your ears, no checking messages every few minutes, just walking, slowly, looking at the trees, listening to the wind, feeling the air. This practice has a name in Japan: Shinrin-yoku, or what many people call forest bathing. Now here's the interesting part. You're not exercising, you're not hiking to burn calories, you're not training for anything. The goal is simply to be there, and that idea feels almost strange in today's world. Because modern life teaches us that every activity should have a purpose, every minute should be optimized, every moment should be productive. The Japanese approach is different. Sometimes the goal is simply to reconnect, to step away from artificial noise, to remember what quiet feels like. Think about the last time you spent 30 minutes completely surrounded by nature. No screens, no alerts, no endless stream of information. For many people, it's been weeks, maybe months, maybe even years, and that's why this ritual feels so powerful. It gives the mind something it rarely gets anymore: space, space to think, space to breathe, space to recover. And while forest bathing can be incredibly calming, the next ritual may surprise you even more, because many Japanese people practice it almost every single day. It takes less than 30 minutes, and it may completely change the way you end your evenings. Let's move to level 3. Level 3, Ofure. Now we arrive at a ritual that millions of Japanese people have practiced for generations. And unlike the first two levels, this one can completely change how your body feels in less than 30 minutes. It's called ofure, the traditional Japanese bathing ritual. Now, if you're thinking this is just taking a hot bath, not exactly. Because in Japan, bathing isn't simply about getting clean. That's what the shower is for. The bath serves a different purpose entirely. It's about recovery, relaxation, and creating a clear boundary between the stress of the day and the rest of your evening. Think about how most people end their day. They're answering one last email, checking one more notification, watching one more video, scrolling through one more feed. Their minds stay active right until the moment they try to fall asleep. Then they wonder why they can't fully relax. The Japanese approach is very different. Instead of carrying the day into the night, they create a transition ritual, a signal to the body that it's time to slow down. And that's where ofure comes in. Traditionally, after washing and cleaning themselves first, people soak quietly in a tub of hot water. Not for 2 minutes, not for 5, but often for much longer. Long enough for the body to begin letting go of tension it has been holding all day. And here's something fascinating. Most stress isn't just in your mind, it's in your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, your back, your breathing. Your nervous system carries stress physically. That's why you can sometimes tell someone is stressed before they even say a word. You can see it in the way they move, the way they sit, the way they hold themselves. The Japanese understood this intuitively, and the hot bath became a way of releasing that accumulated tension. But there is another reason this ritual is so powerful, something most people overlook. For a few minutes, you're unreachable. No multitasking, no productivity, no demands, no expectations, just stillness. And in today's world, that may be one of the rarest experiences of all. In fact, many people become uncomfortable the moment nothing is demanding their attention. They immediately reach for a screen, a distraction, some form of stimulation. But ofuro invites the opposite, to sit quietly, to think, or perhaps not think at all. And that's when something interesting happens. The mind often begins to settle on its own, not because you're forcing it, but because you're finally giving it the opportunity. Now imagine combining this with what we've already discussed. A mindful matcha ritual, time spent in nature, and an intentional evening reset. Already you're beginning to see a pattern. These rituals aren't random. They're all built around the same principle, creating moments where stress no longer controls your attention. But we're only halfway through, because the next Japanese ritual goes much deeper than tea, forests, or hot baths. In fact, many people believe it may be the real secret behind Japan's extraordinary sense of resilience. It's a concept that can change the way you wake up every morning. And once you understand it, you'll see stress from a completely different perspective. Let's move to level 4. Level 4. Ikigai. Up to this point, we've talked about rituals that help calm the body and quiet the mind. But now we arrive at something deeper. Because what if stress isn't always caused by having too much to do? What if sometimes it's caused by not knowing why you're doing it in the first place? This brings us to one of the most famous concepts to come out of Japan. Ikigai, a word that's often translated as a reason for being. Or more simply, a reason to wake up in the morning. At first, that might sound almost too simple. But think about it. How many people spend years moving from one task to the next without ever stopping to ask themselves a very important question? What am I actually doing all this for? They wake up, go to work, pay bills, handle responsibilities, go to sleep, then repeat the cycle again tomorrow. And while there's nothing wrong with responsibility, living without a sense of purpose creates a kind of stress that no hot bath can fix. A stress that follows you everywhere, because when life feels directionless, even small problems can feel overwhelming. But when you know why you're moving forward, you become harder to shake. The Japanese have understood this for generations, especially in Okinawa, one of the world's most famous longevity regions. Many older adults there remain active, social, and engaged well into their later years, not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because they continue to feel connected to something meaningful, a hobby, a craft, a community, a garden, a mission, a family role, something that gives each day significance. And here's what's fascinating. Your ikigai doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to change the world. It doesn't have to make headlines. For one person, it might be mentoring grandchildren. For another, it might be painting. For someone else, it could be helping neighbors, building something, teaching others, or simply becoming a better version of themselves. Purpose doesn't need to be impressive. It just needs to be real. Imagine waking up tomorrow with complete clarity about why your day matters. How much stress would instantly lose its power? How many frustrations would suddenly seem smaller? How many setbacks would become easier to handle? Because purpose changes perspective, and perspective changes everything. When people feel lost, every obstacle feels like proof they're failing. When people feel purposeful, obstacles become part of the journey. That's a massive difference. In many ways, ikigai acts like an anchor. Life still creates storms, problems still appear, challenges still happen, but you don't drift as easily. You know what you're moving toward. And that creates a kind of calm that goes far beyond relaxation. Now, I'm curious about something. If you had to answer in one sentence, what gives your life meaning right now? Maybe it's your family, maybe your faith, maybe your health, maybe a dream you're still working toward. Take a second and share it in the comments. I'd genuinely love to see the different answers. And if you're enjoying these lessons from Japanese culture and longevity, consider subscribing. Not because you have to, but because every week we explore practical ideas that can help create a healthier, calmer, and more meaningful life. Now here's where things get really interesting. Because even though ikigai may be the most famous Japanese philosophy in the world, it's not the final level. In fact, the next habit quietly supports every single ritual we've covered so far. Without it, the benefits of matcha become smaller. The effects of forest bathing fade faster. Even your sleep can suffer. And yet, it's something the longest living people in Japan practice every single day without thinking twice about it. Let's move to level 5. Level 5. Hara-hachi Bu, the secret that ties everything together. We've reached the final level, and interestingly, it's not a tea, it's not a forest, it's not a bath, and it's not even a philosophy. It's a simple rule. One that has quietly shaped Japanese life for generations, especially in Okinawa, one of the most famous longevity regions on Earth. The rule is called Hara-hachi Bu, and its meaning is surprisingly simple. Eat until you're 80% full, not stuffed, not uncomfortable, not until you can't eat another bite, just 80%. Now that might sound almost too easy, but think about how differently most people eat today. Meals are often rushed, distracted, and consumed in front of screens. Many people don't stop eating because they're satisfied. They stop because the plate is empty, or because the commercial break ends, or because they're simply used to overeating. The Japanese approach is different. Instead of asking, "How much can I eat?" the question becomes, "How much do I actually need?" And that small shift changes everything. Because Hara-hachi Bu isn't really about restriction, it's about awareness, it's about paying attention, listening to your body, recognizing the moment when enough is enough. And that idea should sound familiar by now, because every ritual we've covered today follows the same pattern. The matcha ritual slows you down, forest bathing slows you down, ofuro slows you down, ikigai helps you focus on what truly matters, and Hara-hachi Bu slows down one of the most automatic behaviors in modern life, eating. But here's where it becomes even more interesting. This habit doesn't just affect digestion, It can influence how you feel for the rest of the day. Think about the difference between finishing a meal feeling light versus finishing a meal feeling heavy. One gives you energy, the other often leaves you sluggish. One allows you to move comfortably, the other makes you want to sit down and do nothing. And when this pattern repeats day after day, the effects begin to compound. But there is another reason this final habit matters, a reason that connects directly to stress, because overeating and stress often feed each other. People feel stressed, so they eat for comfort. Then they feel worse afterward, which creates more stress, and the cycle continues. Hara-hachi-bu interrupts that cycle. It creates awareness where there was once autopilot, and awareness is often the first step toward change. Now imagine combining all 5 levels together. You begin the day with intention. You spend time in nature. You create an evening ritual that helps your body unwind. You maintain a clear sense of purpose, and you learn to stop before excess becomes the norm. Individually, these habits seem simple, almost ordinary, but together, they create something powerful, a lifestyle built around balance rather than constant stimulation. And perhaps that's the lesson hiding beneath all 5 rituals. The Japanese don't necessarily have less stress than everyone else. They simply have more systems for handling it, more moments built into daily life that encourage awareness, more opportunities to pause, more reminders to slow down. Because despite what modern culture often tells us, peace rarely comes from adding more productivity, more consumption, more distractions, more noise. Very often, peace comes from removing what was never necessary in the first place. And maybe that's the real secret behind these Japanese rituals. Not perfection, not discipline, not some hidden life hack, just the ability to be fully present, to drink a cup of tea without rushing, to walk through a forest without checking a screen, to enjoy a meal without overeating, to end the day without carrying every problem into bed, and to wake up knowing why the day matters. So before you go, I'd love to ask you one final question. Which of these 5 Japanese rituals surprised you the most? Was it matcha, forest bathing, ufuro, ikigai, or hara-hachi-bu? Let me know in the comments. I read as many of them as I can, and I'm always curious to hear which ideas resonate most with people. And if you enjoyed this journey into Japanese wisdom, consider subscribing and joining us for future videos exploring the habits, philosophies, and daily practices of some of the healthiest and longest living cultures in the world. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.